Now starting our special meeting of the governing board, our public hearing at 6:50. All board members are here.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 It is now the Heather and Jim show.
President Ordway, members of the board, and guests. This is a rare occurrence for us here in December. Typically, in Deer Valley, we have our initial budget adoption in July for the upcoming school year, and then we have our revision in May to basically square it up as best we can, knowing that our final numbers will be given to us in July. But in accordance, this year, we know we've already spent the last couple hours talking about how special the school year has been due to COVID and other challenges.
I'm sorry, Ms. Mack, did you say how special this school year has
Special.
been?
I'm trying to put that positive spin on it. We've learned that we could do things we never thought possible. So in that respect, it's definitely been a special accomplishment. One of the things that is not as much fun as some of the accomplishments that we've been able to push through with our amazing staff is that we have a requirement for a December budget revision. December budget revision is required by ARS 15905 when your adopted budget limit is greater than the state's projected budget limit by at least 1%. And because of the current decrease in students that we are experiencing, I am sad to say that we have had that bestowed upon us this December. So we have had a decrease for 2021, and we will talk about enrollment during the regular meeting as well. Budget revisions are required to be completed by December 15th by statute. But I really want to point out that this really is a temporary, I think almost more of an administrative requirement for us. This is not the final landing point. One of the things we always like to talk about when we're looking at the budget and the budget revisions is that what we're presenting here are the worksheets that go to the state that develop our budget, and it's not necessarily our working budget. So when it comes to the budget at the state level, we always want to make sure that we are presenting the highest possible budget that we think we will be able to have for the school year, because it is always, always, always possible to not spend as much as you have adopted for the budget, but it is never possible to spend more than you've adopted. So we always want to make sure that we have as much room to spend as needed for our students and staff to cover the greatest amount of enrollment that we could possibly have in a school year. So we're going to present a couple different, knowing that we're going to present the budget revision in a couple different phases. Since we've said we're going to have a December budget revision, we're going to take a look at that first. And for our December budget revision, we have seen an RCL or revenue control limit decrease of just over $11.5 million due to the decrease in students, district additional assistance decrease of about $153,000, and a slight M&O override decrease. Most of that is offset by the increase in our M&O carry forward. If you will remember, when we adopted our budget back in May for 2020, 2021, we had projected about a $4 million carry forward. But thanks to the decrease in spending, we had fewer costs for substitutes, transportation, overall spending, custodial supplies. We were able to greatly increase that carry forward from projection. So the net change for the December budget revision is just over a decrease of just over $2 million. When we take a look at what that looks like, we think this will help folks picture what that means for us. The bar on the left is where we thought our monies would come from for our 2021 budget, with the red being our state formula and the orange being our transportation, and those items are our part of our revenue control limit. Our district additional assistance is represented there in the yellow, M&O override in the green, and our carry forward in the blue. So if you take a look at the bar chart on the right, you will see that carry forward And the red, the state formula, basically are offsetting each other for the most part. You can see we're just short of where we thought we would be projected when we adopted the budget at the beginning of the year. So that's basically what's represented in the forms that we're presenting tonight and asking for approval in the main meeting at 7 o'clock. But I know you've got questions, and I hope that these next slides will answer those questions. I'm assuming that some of your questions are going to be surrounding the enrollment stabilization or enrollment stability grant and additional increases and decreases that may happen then the rest of the school year. We actually just received our ESG funding amount a little over a week ago, and that amount is $12.8 million. At the very beginning of the school year, we projected it might be around $10 million. We were given a estimating calculator, and off of that, we thought it might be about $13.3 million, and we did land at 12.8. So it is in the ballpark that we were expecting. So those recodes are not seen in our M&O budget yet. The work to recode our M&O expenses to that enrollment stability grant will actually happen over winter break. So when we present the M&O budget report for December at the January meeting, you will see that $12.8 million decrease in expenses on our M&O side next month. Some additional decreases we expect to see. We will have an RCL decrease for time and distance learning. Also in November, we had to submit to Department of Education an attestation basically that explained how much time our students spent in distance learning from August 7th all the way up till our 40th day of instruction, which was September 29th. For us, that was about 99.1% of our time for our students was spent in distance learning. We are estimating on our own that that's going to be a decrease of about $3.6 million more of a decrease to our RCL. But unfortunately, we won't know that either until January. School finance has committed to sending out those reports and that information in January of 2021. The biggest number on here, as far as any additional potential decreases, are additional decreases for our AOI funding. And some of this is more just of a timing issue. With our brick and mortar ADM, our ADM is projected off of the 100th day. And it's based mostly, it's off of enrollment. It's the aggregate of days, and the student is enrolled from the first day to the 100th day. And very easy to calculate. The ADM for AOI is also easily calculated. However, it's based off of the minutes that the students submit. So we started distance learning, or most of our full distance learning in our DVOLP, Deer Valley Online Learning Program, right around October 14th. And so we had about 2 weeks worth of data at that time that were feeding these state reports for our AOI ADM. So if Johnny had not submitted, 5 hours per day for all of those days, it may look like Johnny's not a full-time AOI student. We're working with Dr. Galligan and the folks that are overseeing Deer Valley Online Academy constantly to make sure that we are recapturing that ADM. For our AOI programs, it is a little different than our brick and mortar as well. With brick and mortar, it's based on our school year calendar. With our AOI, we actually have until June to recoup that. However, we are keeping our students on that same calendar timeline as we are with our brick and mortar. So they won't necessarily expand their time, but they can recapture their minutes on Saturday, Sunday, Monday night at 8 o'clock, whenever it may be. So as we see the new reports the ADE presents, which are updated only once a month, we are seeing that number start to uptick. What we're seeing here is a worst case scenario. As of the initial report, we are actually already seeing it, the number for the potential decrease not being so significant. And we actually expect that it will continue to tick down the closer we get to our May revision. And in that case, we would expect to have obviously a smaller loss overall. With our enrollment stability grant, we have committed to our food and nutrition program that has had a significant loss in revenue and has continued to pay all of their employees. to make sure that they have enough money to continue operating the program and to continue feeding all of our students. It does help that we are on the summer feeding schedule basically for the rest of the school year, but we still continue to have that loss of revenue then from those purchased lunches. With all of these things, and that I would like to think 2 years ago when we started that new school fund, we thought it was a smart idea for other reasons, and now it feels really good to have that $915,000 so that we can take our expenses for Union Park and move them out of M&O into that new school fund this year. So for the May revision at this time, we expect, once we have all of those changes made, a net decrease of another $255,000. So here's what that looks like when we're looking at that same graph. We've got the FY21 actual budget, the December revision, and now we've added the May revision, what that will look like. So you can see that overall, we're still holding pretty steady for 2020, 2021. But you can just see that thanks to the enrollment stability grant and a little bit to the new school fund, those are the two items that should we lose any more funding between now and that May revision, those are the two funds that are going to make up the difference. What we want to point out with that is that those are all one-time items. And even our carry forward isn't guaranteed and is a one-time move forward. So while we believe we will hold steady for this year, we will be able to continue funding everything that we've committed to for 2020, 2021. We certainly are very cautious moving into the future, which in that same graph format looks a little bit like this. If you look at the FY22 forecast, some of the things that are missing are that carry forward isn't missing, but it certainly is a decrease from FY21. But we will be missing the enrollment stability grant at this time. There's no hold harmless at the state level. And the new school fund will have been utilized, but that's okay because we won't have a new school next year. Also included in the state formula or the red component of that FY22 forecast is approximately a 1.04% increase in inflation. And so all of that is yet to be seen. We're not sure, but this is our initial best first guess. And with that, I will take any questions.
I have a question. No one else does, huh? Okay. How are we reaching out? And I think this is for maybe Dr. Galligan, but how are we reaching out to those, the parents of the students to make sure that they log their time in, maybe in a timely fashion or at all?
President Ordway, we have automatic emails that go out, as well as our program specialists and program data specialists are also on top of that. We had a process in place with DVOLP, and that process has been expanded to DVOA, and we continue to work on that weekly.
And is it across all grade levels, or is it mainly elementary?
It's across all grade levels, K-12.
Okay. Got one more. The hold harmless, are we talking to or hearing anything from downtown, even though I know it's kind of not their time to be working right now? Jim, you look like you know something.
President Ordway, I think Dr. Finch probably can speak to this better than anybody, but we continue our lobbying efforts through the Education Finance Reform Group.
No, I know that, but I mean, did you hear anything yet? That was my question. Did you hear something?
What we've heard to date is that there's at least a ongoing conversation, which is good news. But I will say that the initial results are that there's not as much of a willingness, due to the uncertainty that exists in the future, as well as some political backlash for things like Proposition 208 passing. So,
oh yeah, that darn. Okay, I didn't mean to be so sarcastic, yet I did.
And just as a reminder, President Ordway, this is a public hearing, so you do need to open up for comments at some point in time once the board has finished answering questions. Asking questions.
Does anyone that's sitting out there want to ask any questions? Hold on. Let's see if anyone else wants to ask a question. Well, I don't see anyone, so I think we covered that part. Mrs. Reed?
When it comes to our students having to quarantine or that they're out for anytime virtually, how does that, is that playing into our AOI numbers at all, or is that under a different category?
Mrs. Reed, members of the board, the absences are excused absences. And so if the student is enrolled in brick and mortar, it actually doesn't affect the ADM at all. So they would just be marked as absent. And whenever we can, if we're able to provide them an option to do some of the work, just like if I had an extended absence in a not special school year where I could pick up my packet. So the version of the packet this year might be if I can participate via Zoom. In those cases, we can actually even count the student as present as well. But since they're brick and mortar, it doesn't affect it all. And then anyone who's AOI, whenever they submit their minutes, the minutes are counted and absences are not an issue.
Okay, perfect. And then with us returning virtual for 2 and 3 weeks in January, will we have an update on that in the future?
Mrs. Reed, members of the board, we can, to my knowledge, at that time, moving to distance learning would not affect funding. Any of the decrease for distance learning was through the 40th day. And so we will have to change our distance learning plan and resubmit that to the state. But as of yet, I haven't heard any specifics on whether or not that would affect funding. We've only heard of distance learning affecting funding through the 40th day.
Thank you.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Thank you. Mrs. Mock, did I hear you correctly that we will have another adjustment in January?
Correct. And that is the distance learning portion that we believe to be about $3.6 million.
Okay,
So
thank you.
that's all of our, or roughly all of our students, about 99.1% of our students were in distance learning from August 7th through September 29th.
Okay, thank you so much.
Well, we're done with our questions. Are you guys finished?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
All right. So, Dr. Finch? Heard you breathing heavily. Okay, so we can conclude our special meeting at 7:09. And we have a motion.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to start our regular board meeting at 7:10. I will say that all of our board members are still here, and we are going to stand for the pledge right now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And perhaps for our moment of silence, we can all think about how weird this 2020 has been so far. But I think we can also think of maybe some really good things that have come out of it that we can bring through by choice to 2021 and not have the pandemic follow us through 2021. So here we have it. Okay. Looks like, Monica, I think you're up.
We need to adopt the agenda.
Or that too.
I move we adopt the agenda. Sorry.
That's all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Monica, now you're up. I forgot that part.
You have to go back out and come back in sometimes.
In our awards fall sports in the agenda is our board work session presentation.
All right, good evening, President Ordway, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Finch, and special guests. We are excited to share with you our student and district successes tonight. It will look a little different than we have had, no handshaking, masks, and social distancing, but that will not squelch the excitement of each accomplishment, and that will be evident. Tonight, we begin with our Arizona Fall Sports champions and runners-up. We will start with our girls swimming 100-yard freestyle state champion, Sandra Day O'Connor freshman, KL Armijo. KL, yes. KL started swimming when she was just 11. At the state championships this year, she placed 4th in the Division I girls 50-yard freestyle and led both the 200 medley and 200 free relays to top 15 finishes. Her best swim was the girls' 100-yard freestyle with a time of 52.13 seconds, in which she was crowned state champion. This is the first time since before 2010, when the AIA divisions were reconfigured, that a freshman has won the Division I 100-yard freestyle. KL plans to defend her state championship next year and win the 50 freestyle title. We're waiting for you. And she will be swimming for Sandra Day O'Connor High School for the next 3 years. So I think we're probably going to see her back here. And then she hopes to pursue an NCAA swimming scholarship. Congratulations to 100-yard freestyle state champion, KL Armijo. Congratulations. All right, just 4.5 short years ago, Sandra Day O'Connor High School senior Max Lyons was new to the sport of golf. Now he is the Arizona State individual golf runner-up. During his time on the golf team, Max has helped accelerate the boys' golf program's successful tradition. Max did this not just through his tremendous skill, but also his ability to better his teammates. Max was not only a vocal leader, but he demonstrated the effort and resiliency it takes to achieve success. Max will be taking his talents to Marquette University, where undoubtedly he will continue his success. Congratulations to Sandra Day O'Connor High School senior and Arizona Golf State individual runner-up, Max Lyons. All right, that concludes our student awards. And tonight we have the opportunity to recognize our own governing board with several awards. So the first one, this award is granted to the board when at least a quorum of board members has attained the level of a certificate of boardsmanship, with the remainder of the board having earned the certificate of orientation to boardsmanship following the attendance of ASBA's new board member orientation. So this award is the Arizona School Board Association Total Boardmanship Award. Yeah. Congratulations to ASBA's Total Board Boardsmanship Award winners, DVUSD Board President Ann Ordway, Vice President Jenny Frank, and board members Julie Reed, Darcy Tweedy, and ASBA President-elect Ann O'Brien. All right, we're going to take a picture of the board. All right. Okay, Governing Board Member Ann O'Brien received the Star Turquoise Award from the Arizona School Boards Association during their virtual county meeting in October. Participation in professional development earns board members Academy of Board Development Continuing Education Units, or CEUs. Completion of ASBA new board member orientation is the doorway to receiving recognition for professional development. Each award level after this requires additional CEU hours. The superior training, accomplishments, and recognition, or STAR awards, are awarded at 4 levels: copper, turquoise, silver, and gold. Congratulations, Governing Board Member Ann O'Brien, on completing 300 CEU hours and earning the Arizona School Boards Association Star Turquoise Award. And yes, we'll take a picture. All right. Governing Board Member Julie Reed received the Professional Development Certificate of Boardsmanship and the Associate of Boardsmanship Awards from the Arizona School Boards Association. As stated previously, participation in professional development earns board members Academy of Board Development Continuing Education Units, CEUs. Each award level after the new board member orientation requires additional CEU hours. Certificate of Boardsmanship requires 36 hours, and Associate of Boardsmanship requires 60 hours. Congratulations, DVUSD Governing Board Member Julie Reed, on receiving the Professional Development Certificate of Boardsmanship and the Associate of Boardsmanship Awards. All right, in our final recognition tonight, Deer Valley Unified School District is governed by a 5-member board of trustees elected by popular vote to alternating 4-year terms. School board members are responsible for broad, forward-thinking analysis and decisive action in all areas that affect students and staff in our schools. Tonight is the final board meeting for 2 of our members, and we want to take a moment to thank both Jenny Frank and Dr. Darcy Tweedy for their blood, sweat, and tears they've given to Deer Valley Unified School District over the last 4 years. Both Ms. Frank and Dr. Tweedy began serving on our governing board in January of 2017. Ms. Frank has served as both president and vice president during her tenure on the board. She came to the governing board as a parent, community member, and past employee. Ms. Frank has lived in the Deer Valley Unified School District since 2001. She holds a Master of Arts in Elementary Education and taught in Deer Valley for 10 years. She also served as a teacher representative on several committees and worked closely with principals and administrators to develop district policies that were fair and equitable for all. She continues to have a passion for making a difference in the lives of students and their families and improving educational outcomes for all. Her 3 sons were successful graduates of Deer Valley High School. Dr. Tweedy served as vice president of the governing board during her 4-year term. She is a highly qualified educator with a master's degree in elementary education and a reading endorsement, and has recently completed her PhD in general psychology with an emphasis in cognition and instruction. Her diverse teaching experience includes elementary education, adult basic education, and college level courses. Dr. Tweedy is the parent of 2 Deer Valley alumni and 1 son who currently attends school in the district. Dr. Tweedy has a deep commitment to DVUSD and used her professional knowledge and expertise to help ensure success for all Deer Valley students. Deer Valley Unified School District students, staff, and community would like to thank Ms. Jenny Frank and Dr. Darcy Tweedy for their commitment to provide the best education for our DVUSD students. Come forward, and Dr. Finch has a crystal apple. All right, and we'll do one more photo. Oh, let me do that. All right, thank you for your service. And that concludes our awards and recognitions. What's this next? Did you want me to turn this?
That's awesome. Look at them. That's cool. Oh, okay. We have. We are moving to.
Consent
we
agenda,
going?
number 6. Oh. Oh, yeah. Did I skip that?
Where am I? Okay. Hey, hey. Hey, let me. Oh, that's. Yeah, 4A. That would be the Jim and Heather. And goodbye, everybody. Thank you for coming. Whatever it is you're doing, make believe we're there with you. See ya.
President Ordway, members of the board, I am pleased to provide additional information to you at the regular governing board meeting. Tonight, we have our standard first of the month finance reports, and we're going to start with the enrollment report as of November 18th, 2020. That was our last enrollment report for the month of November. For that report, we were down about 5.5% in our enrollment from the same time last year, which is approximately 1,860 students. Our enrollment in our Deer Valley Online Academy is maintaining pretty steady at the high 3,300s, just under 3,400. I will answer any questions that you have about the enrollment report for November.
Do we have any questions about the enrollment report? We do not. You may continue.
All right. The next report we have for you is the M&O finance report for the month of November as well. It's a little anticlimactic. Every month we promise that it might look different coming in December, and I think we should have said the December report that's presented in January will be the one that looks a little. As you can see by the report that we included this month, we are still holding all of our available, any potential carry forward amount as a committed budget balance. We are going to do this until we move that $12.8 million worth of M&O expenses into enrollment. And once we can include this tonight's budget revision as part of our overall budget limit as well. So for now, we still continue to project no carry forward for 2020, 2021. but we will start to see some movement next month and then continuing through our May revision. But I will take any questions regarding our M&O expenditures and budget that you have right now.
We have none for you right now, but we'll think of them for later when we can't ask them. So go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, you could have said you were done, Finance. I'm so excited because this is a great meeting already. B, the Deer Valley Online Program Innovation Center.
Good
Dr.
evening,
Galligan.
President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and guests. Tonight, Mr. Miglerino and I will share information about the development of a DVOL Innovation Center that will serve as the home for our K-12 online school. Jim?
President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch, just wanted to share a little history. Back when the 2019 bond election was being considered, we did have a citizen advisory committee that helped us determine some of the capital needs for the district over the next 5 years, from the 2021 school year through the 24-25 school year. This was an extensive group, a committee as we define it, so it included some parents, some staff members, and school administrators, some key leadership positions as well, especially because we were looking for the bond to fund our technology needs. Our CIO actually sat on this committee as well, Mr. Jeff Anderson. But that committee, after several meetings, did come up with a plan to determine exactly what would be included in the bond authorization that was to be considered in November 2018. Included in that are several projects that are what I refer to as instruction-related facility needs, and that includes renovations at our library and media centers for our high schools and our true middle schools. Some conversion to some maker spaces at our 5 high schools, a computer science initiative, some virtual reality labs, and then last and certainly not least, an innovation center that would provide a home for our online learning, our at the time growing online learning program. And I will say that we did not anticipate a pandemic back in 2018 when this was 18 and 19 when this was being contemplated. But as a result of that, this has been accelerated to be able to the growth I'm talking about of our online learning. Obviously, with the pandemic causing the conversion to some virtual learning for some of our students. As a result of that growth, we believe that the Innovation Center is needed sooner as opposed to later, so that it would provide a place for all of the people that are associated with online learning.
Last year, knowing that online education was only going to increase and grow, we included, as Jim said, the DVLP Innovation Center in the 2019 bond initiative, which was successfully supported by our Deer Valley community. At that time, we did not know that 2020 would have a pandemic in store for us and that our online program would actually explode. The Deer Valley Online Learning Program has grown with student enrollment every year since its inception in 2007. However, this year of COVID-related changes has been the impetus for DVUSD's largest enrollment of students to be in our online program. While we have offered online learning for the past 14 years during this 2020 school year, our program has served over 4,400 students, becoming our largest school. And you can see the numbers there for our 9-12 full-time students, our part-time students at high school, and then our DVOA K-8 full-time students. With the expansion of DVOLP over the years, we have grown in full-time teachers and support staff. While the Deer Valley Online Learning Program was originally housed at the district office, we shifted the program to Barry Goldwater High School in the mezzanine in the library a couple of years ago. And most recently, with added support staff, we temporarily moved to the traditional school at Bel Air. As it is, we still maintain space at Barry Goldwater High School for our full-time online high school teachers. I want to thank Principals Anita Stulk and Vivian Hunt for graciously providing space for DVOLP and DVOA staff when we asked. In addition, we continue to need space for the in-person opportunities we offer or require online students in a normal, typical year to attend. Right now, we are limited in that space and location. We have a need for instructional technology to play a larger role in supporting not only our online program, but also our district as a whole, with all students and levels being one-to-one now. Along with the expansion of student technology access comes the need to provide additional training and support to staff, students, and parents. Through the Innovation Center, we can host staff training events, parent workshops, student camps, and device support. As you know, in anticipation of teaching and learning in various formats this school year, we embarked on course building in core content, special areas, intervention programs for kindergarten through 8th grade, in addition to the existing 9 through 12 processes for DVOLP that we've had in place for years. Within these courses, video instruction is a key element of each lesson, and recording rooms that are available for teachers and content specialists will allow for high-quality video and audio capture. Through course building, we are able to support on-campus and online teachers with the development of content using district-adopted and board-adopted curriculum resources that is ready for delivery within Canvas Learning Management System that we all use. The instructional technology area partners with teachers as we re-envision a hashtag extraordinary teaching and learning experience and the availability of devices and a decrease in digital devices. DVUSD looks to the development of the DVOLP Innovation Center that will serve as a home for our K-12 online school, as Jim has mentioned, and includes an innovative and flexible workspace for staff and students attending this school. The center will also serve as a multifunctional work meeting place for DVUSD events and can be rented by outside entities looking for a venue that meets their creative and dynamic needs. This includes the exciting growth of esports in our high schools, which may drop to middle school sometime in the future, and providing a space for Deer Valley esport competitions. We also see the Innovation Center providing space for conferences and other PD opportunities. DVUSD is a leader in Arizona education and will continue to trailblaze while remaining fiscally responsible. Optimizing an existing facility allows us to meet both goals of being a state leader in education and a fiscally responsible district. Through the development of an existing district space, and that's the annex right next door to us, we can support DVUSD students, staff, families, and stakeholder groups with a place that is home to DVULP, students, teachers, and staff, and also versatile enough to meet multiple other uses. The space depicted here was originally our warehouse and transportation area before we outgrew it. Currently, it is being underutilized and mostly is storage space, along with some office space and a training lab. As we have begun to envision the purpose and use of this space, as I've mentioned, we identified functional uses, including a home campus for online students to physically and emotionally connect to DVUSD Arizona online instruction, teachers, and programming. We also envision the potential multi-uses as a collaborative community space to offer the next generation of experiences to stakeholders and meet multiple district needs, including, and you might have attended some of these in different locations, our Fine Arts Festival, which is typically in the spring, the CTE High School to Career Expo, which is generally in the fall, our tri-university and private university events that we have lost our original space, which was CCV, and we have bounced around trying to find a location for that. That's usually in August and September. Our Business Partnership Expo, which is generally, I believe, in the fall, and then our health fairs that occur throughout the year. The DVOLP Innovation Center will provide an updated communal and innovative space to meet a variety of needs for a large school district that right now has limited access to such spaces and resources, as well as a location for our DVOLP online program. So here are some pictures. as you can see, we will have some serious decluttering to take care of prior to construction beginning. As daunting as this may look, we will identify the inflexible elements, then prioritize pieces and begin filling in the space with allocated functions and layout of components. The number one priority is to have a dedicated location for DVOLP and DVOA staff and areas for students to connect with those teachers, and space, of course, for course building needs. We know the space must remain flexible and easily adaptable to stakeholder needs or even identify ways to solve needs no one yet knows. We will blend function with imagination, including walls that are movable, similar to what you see in this room, but perhaps updated, having complete tech wiring and infrastructure completely redone, and then flexible spaces that inspire learning for both children and adults. And of course, knowing where we are economically, we need to take a realistic approach to this endeavor while working to be both functional and fiscally responsible.
And if I could share just maybe a tentative timeline. When I mentioned that we were accelerating this particular project, we always had it in our bond plan that this would be funded in the first year, but it wasn't necessarily planned prior to the summer coming up. So we've moved it up on the schedule. Providing information tonight about this particular project. Would like to bring an architect on board at the start of the 2021 calendar year, so in January, so that we can start working on a design. Thanks to Dr. Galligan's leadership, we've already met with a small group that is working on refining the definition of what an innovation center would look like in the minds of the Deer Valley staff members. And so we're at least going to have a running start at it once we were able to bring an architect on board. Our tentative plan is to try and have the remodel done, depending on the scope itself, what that will include. To have that done, hopefully in time for the start of next school year. It might not be exactly on this timeline because, again, we don't have all of the details worked out at this point in time. If the scope was to expand to be greater than what is envisioned right now, we would obviously need more time to be able to do the improvements themselves. So speaking about the architect, did reach out to an architect that has a connection to the work that was performed at the district office back when this building was added to the building back in 2007 to get their initial thoughts. And they thought that it would be roughly about $120,000 for them to do the design and the construction administration. That's just a rough estimate at this point in time. 75% of that would be in the design of the project, including getting the permits. So about 90,000 of that 120,000 to at least find out how feasible it is to develop a design to see if that meets with our expectations. The balance of that, or about $30,000, would be construction administration. Would only be our responsibility if we decided to actually make the improvements themselves. So if we were unable to, let's say the budget's not fit for the amount of work that's necessary for that particular building, that building has not been occupied, the warehouse part of it has not been occupied for a long period of time. There are new codes that are going to be required for us to bring that building up to the current codes. So as we start to get into it, it could be a little bit more involved than the $1 million that we had originally slated for the Innovation Center, knowing that if we're going to repurpose that particular building.
We know that this has been a unique year, although, Heather, I wouldn't call it special. I would say it's been a unique year. And although our online program has swelled to just under 4,500 children, we know that's probably not going to be the case going into next year. But we do know that we will have parents who select an online learning program for their children in elementary, middle, and high school, more so than they ever have before. Many of the processes that we have had in place for our high school with fast track and tutoring, in-person tutoring opportunities, and certain expectations for children who are not necessarily doing well in an online environment, but who, with some touching in a blended situation, can be successful, is where we would want to move forward. At this time, neither DVOLP or DVOA have their own location. They are scattered across a minimum of 2 campuses and sometimes 3 campuses. So for us to be able to pull that program together, having a location is going to be important. In addition, just as an FYI, sometime end of January, beginning of February, we will begin a process where we look at revisioning DVOA and DVOLP to become a K-12 online school for Deer Valley. It will be marketed as an online school in Deer Valley, not as a program. It will have its own name, it will have its own motto, its vision, its mission, and we will have that ready to share with our parents pretty much right after spring break, so that as we are able to come on board with, we'll call it DVOLP Innovation Center now because that's how it was labeled in the bond initiative, it will become a school with its own name and its own rights. So that has been the vision that we've had for a little chunk of time, but especially this year as we have lived through many of our students and families choosing online, as well as our own ability to course build and use our own board adopted resources, curriculum, and state standards, and have found success in that as well. Dr. Finch has a vision for us within the next 3 to 5 years. And Dr. Finch, if you'd like to add to that.
Just want to thank you for starting this adventure. As you know, I talk a lot about how we lose students to Primavera, et cetera, those charter schools that are online. And then when they go take those courses and then they come back and we require them to take ours, they don't do well. And so as we march to number 1, we need to have that as an option and a solid option that we've created so that when a parent picks Deer Valley Online, whatever the new name will be, it will be a sticker that means something. So I think that's a market that's not going away. And I think it's, as Dr. Galligan has said, that we need to be able to compete in this market and challenge for the future market that's going to be there.
And I'll take any questions if you have any.
Are you whispering? Mrs. Reed has a question.
It's more of just a request. Mr. Miglorino, if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes and explaining the buckets of money, because we just had our special meeting regarding, our budget shortfall and how we might have to come back and cut some money from our budget. And so if we have community members or parents who are tuning in who may not have understand how the buckets of money work, I would like to just get in front of any questions that might come forth. Thank you.
President Ordway, Ms. Reed, yes, that's a very good point. So thank you for asking the question. Sometimes we take for granted when we say bond initiative as to that there's a common understanding of that. But these funds are specifically targeted for capital improvements and were part of what was approved by the voters in the November of 2019 election for capital improvements and cannot be used for anything but the capital items that were identified in the voter pamphlet. And so this is an investment that we would be making for a need that has arisen faster than we envisioned back in 1819. Again, we did not foresee the pandemic, but we did know that there was a growing need for an online presence. And those monies would not be able to be utilized for any of the funds that Ms. Mock was referring to in terms of trying to balance a future operational budget. These are capital needs that are funded from the bond initiative that were entrusted with the voters to provide the things that we said would be in the pamphlet.
Perfect. Thank you.
Ms. Frank?
So that if I'm understanding this correctly, to Mrs. Reed's point, then the the money to fund all this all comes from a previously approved bond.
President Ordway, Ms. Frank, yes, that is correct. And I think we may, just for clarification purposes, we may do some combining of things. And I'm just going to say, for example, the virtual reality labs and the Deer Valley Innovation Center, although they were separate line items in the bond authorization, those could be collapsed. And then the project could be $1.5 million, and the virtual reality labs would be included in the Innovation Center. So that is one of the considerations. So I don't want people to think that it's hard coded as just $1 million for only an innovation center. It's just that we have an obligation to meet all of the requirements that we had in the voter approved bond, and so we need to make sure that all of those things are done because that's what we have been entrusted to do.
Okay. And then my second question is, this will, if I'm understanding that this will be brought back to the board at a future meeting date in January, February, March timeframe?
President Ordway, Ms. Frank, that's correct. There is no action item on tonight's agenda. This is just a report. The first step would be to award to an architect, and that would be in, we hope, in January. There would still be an opportunity for the board to make future decisions when we would bring back the actual construction contract
Okay,
to
so
perform the
it's
work.
going to be brought back as an action item in January. So in that case, you have my full unconditional support.
Duly noted.
Let's just move right along and keep those opportunities away from Ms. Frank. Are you done, you guys, with that? You're done? No more questions? Okay. Oh, Gary, I think it's back return to school report. Are you ready? I thought she just... Oh, she's got the... Oh, you're the one holding up the show, Dr. Galligan? Okay. Write that down, someone, please.
Okay, good evening again, President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch. This return to school report will be much briefer than ones in the past, or I should say it will likely be briefer given our work session this evening. The return to school safely piece has been covered in the work session, and so there are additional pieces that will be provided to you from return to work safely and also return to learning. And so with that, I will give it to Dr. Galligan.
President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch, one of the questions that the board asked of us this past fall was to revisit the synchronous support for second semester. The Return to Learning team met for 3 different meetings to identify what this would look like in the second semester. And what you see here is the work of teachers, administrators, and department leaders. So I just want to orient you to the left side first. So at this point in time, the students that this information applies to would be for those students who are quarantined for positive results or contact tracing. It applies to students who have been required to stay home for COVID-like illness, and that has been confirmed by the school nurse or the campus administration. The process that would be used is that our parents and students would go through the school nurse to report an illness, and then next steps would be determined based on the symptoms, and that would be communicated to the families by either the campus administration or teacher. So if you look on the right side now, the additional process that is already in place, actually, is that schools would notify teachers of quarantine or absent students for COVID-like illness. And then they would email parents upon notice of that quarantine the expectation of at-home learning. Schools work directly with families to provide information about at-home learning. I will say that when we talked about this in the Return to Learning team, many, if not all, of our campus administrators felt that they already work directly with their families to provide that information and learning for kids who are at home. But with that said, we did determine that there needed to be more consistency, as you all have asked. So that last bit of information you'll see in the bottom right corner. It will look a little different for the levels, but it will be consistent between those levels. So if we have children in a K-6 or K-8 campus, there will be a minimum 2 live check-ins per every 5 instructional days. Those live check-ins would include potentially live Zoom with direct instruction, small group tutoring, or individual check-ins with students. And that would be a minimum of 2 live check-ins per student. And that would be K6, K8. For our true middle schools and Highland Lakes Middle School, there would be a minimum of 2 live Zooms per every 5 instructional days. And that would be either direct instruction or small group tutoring. That would be determined when campus administration or teachers work directly with families to determine what makes the best sense for both. At high school, we would maintain daily live Zoom direct instruction, and that would be either whole group, whole class, or small group. You'll see that there are similarities between the 3 levels, but there are some slight differences between them. I will say that this has been something that we did work closely with the Return to Learning team, and then we did take this out to our level meetings with our administration just to ensure that everyone knew and understood what we were proposing and what our plan is for that synchronous support for second semester. I know that some of you may wish that this was broader. What I would like to share is that we talked long and hard about this and did not feel that this synchronous support would apply to students who are on vacation with their family. In any normal year, we would not do that. We would give packets of information that kids could complete on vacation, and that would be what we would provide. This would also not apply to parents who keep students who are healthy home because a sibling may be quarantined and the parent wants to keep the other child home. We feel, as Dr. Finch and Dr. Zerbach has said, the safest place for our children is indeed on our campuses. And so if a child has not been quarantined or has not been identified with a COVID-like illness or COVID, then we would want them to be at school in person learning with their teacher. And then it does not apply to kids who decide I'm going to check out for a day or two and I just want to hang out on Zoom with my teacher. That, of course, is not the purpose. That in a normal, typical year, that would not have been something that would have occurred. So our premise here is that if, as a school or a district, we have identified that your child should not and cannot be at school for however many days, then it is our duty to provide a learning opportunity for them. And that's what you will see in the bottom right corner. I'll take any questions you may have.
Dr. Tweedy.
I guess my question would be, and it's kind of twofold. So one of the issues, at least that's been communicated to me by parents, when they were asked to pick in person versus online, our number of cases were considerably smaller. And like today, 12,000 cases was reported. And when they made this decision, there may have been a few hundred a day some days. So also when we made the decision, it was not all 3 benchmarks read. And that got changed after these parents were told to make the decision as to what they wanted. So what are our plans for accommodating parents who don't want to send their kids to school the next 2 weeks and risk having to be quarantined or sick for Christmas? What are the plans to accommodate those students?
Ms. Ordway, Dr. Tweedy, I I would say that if a parent chooses to keep their child home, that would be similar to any other school year. They would call their child in, and that child would be marked absent, as we have always done. The parent, of course, could ask for packets, like we've done in the past. Also, we are just to the last 8 days now, so I think that is a parent choice to choose to keep them home, and if they would like to request from the school and the teacher the work that they would miss, they can certainly do that. I would also encourage any parents who feel that they may have this concern for the second semester to enroll in DVOA. That way, when we start the school year out in the second semester, they have the assurance that their child will be virtual and will be with a teacher who is teaching virtually for that semester.
And I don't know if any of the other board wants to comment, but I would just say, I don't think it's the same as any other school year, because I think not wanting to send your kid to school because there was like 12,000 cases today versus maybe 200, 500 when they made the decision. And they were told if one benchmark was read at the time they made the decision. And I know you didn't change the benchmarks, but they made a decision based on information that is no longer true. I would just say marking them absent and having for 2 weeks is not an appropriate resolution for those parents. They need the option to not send their kids. And I think it also, if they're not happy about it, I know the staff's not happy that we don't have social distancing in place. I don't think we force the issue. I think the parents need to be accommodated in that decision. And then we go into the break and then the 2 weeks online. And I think also the district needs to communicate, given the new benchmarks and how we're making decisions going forward, who wants to change their mind and get that all situated. But those are my 2 cents.
Dr. Tweedy, I'll just add on a couple of comments. As far as the changes from the revised guidance from ADHS from the 1 to the 3 metrics, that guidance going forward, you are correct for those that are currently enrolled in DVOA. They did make the decision for that, but those that made the decision for second semester made the decision after ADHS had revised that, because those revisions went into place in October, the end of October, for them. Your point is noted. I am aware that parents are requesting to, I should say some parents are requesting to keep their kids at home until December 18th and then to resume when it comes back. And so what we can do is we will be talking with administrators at least once this week, and I can provide in the board update how exactly it's happening for the K-8, and that's inclusive of K-6 and 7-8. When I say that, I do know the high schools continue to do what they have done in the past for them. And so, but I am aware that some parents are requesting that. And principals have texted me. They have let me know that they have had some parents requesting that. So I can put that in a board update as far as how exactly some of them are doing it if capacity is different among the schools. And that is a situation when, again, I know that does cause some questions at times from the community, but there may be some differences as far as how folks are able to do that based on capacity until the end of the break. That's why I know Dr. Galligan wanted to preface this with going forward in the second semester, this would be the expectation.
Ms. Frank?
So I would just like to follow up on Dr. Tweedy's comments. And, we've all received emails from parents in different situations. And I agree with you, Dr. Galligan, that in a typical year, when I was teaching, if I had a student, the parents pulled them out to go to Disneyland, or there was an illness or whatever it was, you provided paper packets and some instructions and That's just what you did in a typical year. I would just suggest it. I'd like for you to look at it from this perspective. When it seems to you that this is a parent's choice to take their child out for the next 8 days, essentially 2 weeks of school. If you are a parent of a child with asthma and your spouse has asthma, this really isn't a choice. If you are a parent of a child and someone in your household, maybe your elderly mother is living with you, or maybe you yourself have an autoimmune disorder, or there's someone in your household who has high blood pressure and a heart condition, this isn't a choice. You have to keep your kid home. And I've gotten these emails from people, that parents, that this is their situation. I would just urge you to please accommodate them as best you can, understanding that these are difficult times for everybody. So I would just like to add that perspective to Ms. Tweedy's comments. Thank you.
President Ordway, Ms. Frank, I don't disagree. I completely sympathize with our families and children, and I sympathize with our teachers and schools. And in some cases, there's just not a good answer. But I think, as Gary mentioned, we are meeting with our campus administrators this week. So perhaps for our K-6, K-8 schools, we can ask our administrators to take a look at what we've already shared with them for synchronous support in second semester, and at minimum, be able to have a live check-in with those particular students once this week and once next week, just to make sure that they are good. Remember, our teachers have their courses in Canvas and can certainly ensure that kids see what's going on at a minimum, and ensure that they don't feel so lost as they end the semester. And we will definitely take that to our administration. Please know that our principals are also, they want to support their families and their children, but they also want to support the needs that they have with their teachers. And it's just finding a good balance there. But Ms. Frank, I completely agree 100% with you.
Ms. Reed?
I did have one other question.
President Ordway, can I just add on to that piece? What I want to make sure that I relay to the board is that is to really reiterate the last part of what Dr. Galligan said. I know during these times, which are different, the administrators, they're doing a good job. The teachers are doing a good job. They do have sympathy for what's happening right now. They do understand that times are different. And so they are working. I am confident 100% that they are working to meet the needs as best as they can during this time. And so, but again, we will touch base with them.
Thank you. Go ahead.
One other thing. Well, I would just also like to say that if teachers, administrators can facilitate those live check-ins, that may be a good compromise, going forward for at least the next 8 days. So thank you for offering that. And then also, I just want to clarify. So if we have a situation, because I did get an email with a situation similar to this, where there is a kid in a family who's diagnosed with COVID, and there's maybe one or two younger siblings who are in quarantine. They may not have been diagnosed with COVID, but they are clearly living in a household with someone with COVID. Are all three of those students then going to be on the list to Zoom into their class meetings? Because if the parent is keeping those non-sick children home, that's doing the responsible thing. We know this runs like wildfire through families. And even though that child may not appear to be sick or may not even test positive for maybe 5 days after exposure to the sibling, we want to encourage our parents to do the responsible thing. So would all the students in that family be able then to Zoom in? I just want to clarify and make sure I'm understanding.
I can answer that, Ms. Frank. The answer to that is yes in that situation. That is a household contact, so that's primary exposure with those particular students. So the answer would be yes.
Thank you, Dr. Zurbach.
But Ms. Frank,
The question I think before that You were referring to when Dr. Galligan mentioned the siblings of quarantine folks. I think that's what your question is about.
Okay.
So again, the question that you just posed to me is if there is a positive COVID case in the house. And so again, to reiterate, the siblings of that positive person would be household contacts, which would be a mandatory quarantine for those particular students. What Dr. Galligan mentioned is that if there are students who have been quarantined due to an exposure to someone not in the household, such as at school, for instance, that if that particular quarantine student has siblings who also are in school but did not have the primary exposure, there is no secondary exposure with public health. And so it's for those students that Dr. Galligan made that point about, that there would not be a Zoom provision provided.
Because they're not under quarantine.
That is correct. And of course, if public health would change that, then we would change
Right.
that as well. That, as of right now, public health states that is not a quarantine student.
Mrs. Reed?
Thank you, Dr. Tweedy and Mrs. Frank, for bringing up the point. I sent an email to Dr. Finch the other day requesting that same information, that we could make some accommodations for parents and students who might not feel that it's in their best interest to be in school in person right now. And the follow-up to that request is I would just ask that at the school level or at the district level, however it may be appropriate, that we clearly make that process to parents in a way that they know how to request that. Does that make sense? So that they know who to contact with that, if that's the teacher, if that's the principal, if that's, so we can funnel the information and the request to the appropriate person. And then we did get an email about DVOA and the lists for students who are transitioning from DVOA back to brick and mortar for next semester, that some of those schools haven't received the list of their kids yet. And so they haven't been able to populate student schedules. So do we know when our brick and mortar schools will have the lists of their kids?
President Ordway, Ms. Reed, actually, we can't populate anything until grades are finalized, and that won't happen for any grade level until end of day on December 18th. Schedules will not be created until after December 18th, so we will have quite a few people working over winter break, similar to the way we do with high school, working over the holiday break to build those schedules. So right now, all we can do is still collect parents' information that they are returning or they are not returning, and then those schedules will be built after December 18th. What we do know is that Mary Beth Highland keeps us updated daily on information from parents, and the brick and mortar schools have a list of all of the parents who have not completed that survey to indicate if they are remaining with DVOA or if they are intending to go back to their brick and mortar campus. Our campuses are making those phone calls just to make sure that parents are able to tell them or us what their decision is at this point in time.
Thank you. And then, is that being communicated out to parents that are transitioning schedules?
President Ordway, Ms. Reed, not yet, because there is no year that we ever communicate schedules prior to grades being closed on the last day.
Sorry, I wasn't clear of when they can expect, like when they can log into Power Schools, of when that'll be updated, or is it one of those things where on January 4th it'll just be
I would
there?
say they can look more than likely on January 3rd. We will have classified staff and some of our admin working on that throughout the holiday break. But we will let the parents know for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Tweedy?
Was this the only slide, or was this just for questions on this?
There are additional slides, Dr. Tweedy. This is the sole slide for return to learning.
Okay, then I don't know that my question fits here, so I'll wait.
President Ordway, should we proceed?
Sure.
Or are there additional questions on this slide?
Do you want to just ask it now and then he can go through, or do you think it's going to be answered in the next 3 slides? Okay, good. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Galligan. We'll now go to return to work safely with Mrs. Moffett.
All right, we've organized 3 things to cover this evening. The first one are staffing updates, second, recruiting for campus coverage, and lastly, reporting requirements and process updates around COVID. So first off, in HR and across the system, we are celebrating the fact that we've hired some special education teachers. I know. We've done really well this last semester. We've brought on some great student teachers that have really nicely helped us in this pandemic year, and many of them are staying with us and will be taking or filling some of our vacancies. So we're celebrating that. I think I provided in the update as well that Judy Williams participated in the online GCU job fair, and we secured some candidates that way as well as future student teachers. Secondly, we are still in the process of reviewing the first round of the DVOA surveys that Dr. Galligan mentioned. Mary Beth is providing those surveys to us as well, as the principals are calling those families that have not indicated which direction they would like to go. That's finalizing some information for us. On first review, we have been able to look across our system and see if there are any areas at the brick and mortar that we feel we may need to shift staffing toward. At this time, it's really not making a significant impact at the brick and mortar, though many are coming back. We're not seeing the need to add a lot of staffing. That's not to say that there is none, but there's not much. Where we're seeing the need to staff right now is in the 7th and 8th grade at DVOA. And we have been able to make some adjustments so far to add some staffing over in the 7th and 8th grade area of DVOA in anticipation for January. We also know, similarly to starting a normal school year, when we come back from the holiday break, we could be looking at the surplus process again, not knowing exactly where our parents will choose to go. We know that we need to maintain that flexibility is to a large degree because we're not exactly sure or we don't intend to force them into a decision now if they're not sure. So we know that it's possible when we return that they will want to go one way or the other, and so we will need to adjust. And then Dr. Galligan and her team, I'm sure, will have to identify a time when we do really need to know. And then the third bullet, we are currently drafting timelines. This might sound really strange because we are so focused on this year, more so than in any year past, all the little details week to week. We have to staff for the 21-22 school year, and this is when we usually begin. And so we did have a conversation in cabinet this week about what the timeline is going to look like in this really unusual year. So we're anticipating that our staffing meetings, those meetings that we have with every single campus, and we FTE, and we look at resignations and where staffing may need to go, those will begin likely the first week of February. We usually start those right off the bat in January, but we, through the recommended virtual school for the first couple of weeks when we come back and getting our feet under us, we felt the first week of February was most appropriate. And then we anticipate actually starting the first round of certified staffing the last week of February or early March. And as you all know, contract time usually coincides with that. So we are planning the timeline for contracts too, which we will begin to bring to you in January. For example, contract language renewal, adoption, and lists for renewal and so forth will all need to be in front of the board before mid-March. And then statutorily, all of that needs to be completed in mid-April. So we're preparing for that right now. And then recruiting for campus coverage. As we've had many discussions at board meetings regarding coverage plans, many of you have mentioned, and we agree, that as much as possible, we do not want to be utilizing our staff on campus to have to cover for one another. for the obvious reason of we want to keep things as contained as possible. But also, as Dr. Tweedy has mentioned, you can get pretty tired when you don't have that prep time during your day or that break during your day. And when each day you're working to cover, it can get exhausting. So we have brought some teams together to creatively think of ways we can recruit our community into our campuses. And so we've had some conversations with campuses, and we're encouraging them to establish their own goals. So, for example, if a campus identifies that they would really like to have 5 people in their own community that have health licensing of some type, for example, a paramedic license or a CNA license, and our lead nurse onboarded those particular people, they could sub into the health office if we needed them to. We also, a campus could identify or promote to their community. We would really like to have 5 community members that would be available as certificated substitutes, and we could take them through that process, or as classroom assistants, and we could take them through that process as well. So I'll walk through some of these. As you all know, if a classroom needs to be covered and the teacher is able to Zoom from home, we can send a classified staff member into that classroom to manage the students while the teacher is teaching from home. And so we, in that frame of thought, know that we have many parents that would like to assist and do have the skill set of relating to students and managing students, but they don't have that sub-certificate. They could be in the classroom as a classroom assistant, just like if we asked a para to do the same thing while a teacher Zoomed. So we're looking for people that would be interested in supporting us in that way. We're always looking for custodial substitutes, as you know, or those that would like to work as substitutes and can secure a position with us, Allied Universal. We also, in that model, don't know if I've mentioned this before, can employ other staff members. We've had questions about this many times from a variety of campuses that are already employed in a different way. They're an exempt employee or a certified employee, and they're interested on this classified function. And we usually, or we can't employ you in 2 different ways if we are your single employer. However, if you are an exempt employee or a certified employee and you would like to perform that classified function, we can hire you through Allied Universal to do that classified function at a different portion of your day. So we've worked that out as well. I mentioned the subs for the health office, people that do understand to a degree what it would require, what COVID looks like, and what a health office would require. Certified subs, I mentioned, and then our principals, any other innovative solution that they may also have, but also meets employment requirements. That second part is extremely important, legal and employment requirements. And then, as you all know, I like to always include this to remind our employees to make sure that they're reporting any situation that they may be in so that we can assess their particular situation and identify when their return to work day could be. Dr. Zerbach mentioned that the CDC changed their guidance for quarantine. And so I just did look at Maricopa County Department of Public Health, and they did just post that. So both of our departments are going to be changing all of our documentation to reflect that. No longer 14 days, but instead the 10-day time period with one stipulation, and that is at the 7th day. Someone could come back in if a test result showed that they were negative. But there's also a time frame even for that test result, because as you know, if you had exposure today and you were worried and you went and took a test today or tomorrow or even the 3rd day, it is very unlikely that you're going to show that you have COVID. So it is likely going to be around the 5th day to the 7th day that you would present symptoms, and then, of course, at the same time could potentially test positive. So that's why that guideline is also in there. And then I had a question from a board member this week, too, regarding essential worker guidance for all of our employees. Valley. Do want you to know that if an employee is symptomatic, they cannot come to work. If an employee has tested positive for COVID, even if they're asymptomatic, they cannot come to work. However, if one of our employees has come in close contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID-19 or meets the definition by the CDC or Maricopa County for close contact, they are required to report to us, and then we engage in dialogue with that employee to identify the level of exposure and under essential worker guidance that's provided to us by Maricopa. And if you go to that website, and I'm happy to provide that information to you in the as well, there's an asterisk that indicates the list of all of the functions that are essential work, and K-12 education is one of those. And so that is why we fit within the essential worker guidance platform. Guidance, yeah. And again, I'm happy to provide any additional clarification. I think perhaps what could help you in understanding what that dialogue looks like, if someone is to call us and tell us, for example, if I were to call and say that my husband has tested positive for COVID-19, I would engage in dialogue and ask, when did your husband become symptomatic from COVID? When did the symptoms begin? And during that time, tell me about your level of exposure. Are you guys sharing common spaces? And sometimes it gets as intimate as it's likely that you're also sharing the same bed or sleeping in the same room. Yes. Are you sharing how you're using the same kitchen, the same bathrooms, and that type of thing? It's assumed that that is the case. And so in those cases, that's a high level of exposure, and we will keep that employee out during the quarantine time. If the employee tells us that their level of exposure perhaps was even in the classroom, describes to me how far away a student was or another employee was during that time, the intensity of the contact, whether they were masked. For example, if an employee tells me that the positive person was not masked, they were very hands-on, perhaps even changing the toileting. Thank you. Toileting a student or that type of thing who did test positive, that's a high level of exposure. And so we would ask that employee to quarantine. So we do engage in thorough dialogue regarding those things to decide whether or not it's appropriate for someone to come back. All right. And I believe that is all. So I'll take questions as well.
Mrs. Reed, do you have a question? Okay, or Ms. O'Brien, you've been very good. Okay, Mrs. or Dr. Tweedy.
I just had a quick question. With normally we have holiday parties the last week of school, and hopefully, the kids will still have something. But are you guys giving any guidance about maybe having those outdoors or something? I'm just imagining all the kids bringing cookies and stuff to class and taking off their masks right before winter break and snacking together.
Dr. Tweedy, in terms of kids bringing cookies and whatnot, no, I hope that is not happening, because we're not having homemade treats brought to school for that. So things of that nature should not be happening. We have provided, I believe in our most recent parent update, we provided a reminder to the parents to check with their school about restrictions during this particular time, because it is the holiday season. And so in terms of other restrictions for that, though, we would continue with our current mitigation that we have been doing.
Mrs. Reed.
Is it possible in our Friday update to get our percent absenteeism that you share with the county when you're doing your consultations, so we can understand a little bit more of information? President Ordway, Ms. Reed, I think what I can share is all the ways that we can collect that information. There is something that I have put in a board report a couple of times, and this is one point of information that is a little bit difficult for us. I think a board member asked us a little while back, can you share with us what the absence rate is by running a report? And we actually can't do that right now. We have to look at multiple data sets because we have many employees that are working, teaching from home. And so we're not asking those people to put, or those employees to put their absence into the system. So like a normal year, we would be able to tell that right away. In a point in time, what we do have to do is take a look at not only the absence calling into the system, but we have to look at the data that we are collecting and look at the number of employees that we have asked to either isolate or quarantine and calculate that. And if those aren't covered, then that is what what Maricopa County wants to know. How many of those situations do you have right now that are not covered? Okay, thank you.
Mrs. O'Brien, nothing? No. Frank?
So I have a couple of questions. Some of them were sent to me by staff members. I did have a teacher who wanted some information on, and of course this is thinking further ahead, but will teachers be required to take the COVID vaccine? What will that be mandatory? Will there be some discretion based on individual circumstances? And I'm not an anti-vaxxer, so I'm not trying to ignite that debate with this question, but I did have a teacher who contacted me and wanted that information.
So President Ordway, Ms. Frank, our understanding at this point in time is that our school nurses are part of Phase 1A. And it's our understanding that we are to submit a list to the county of who those employees are so that they do have the ability, it's not mandated, but they do have the ability to go to those locations and take the vaccine. There are 2 vaccines that we are aware of right now. We don't know which one will be deployed to us. One of them will require, I believe, a 21-day time frame in between the first shot and the second shot. And the second one, I believe, is a 28-day time frame between the 2. And then after that are teachers. And teachers are Phase 1B. We don't have a timeline for that yet, but it's our understanding that they will send the vaccine to us. And we will be able to work with Nurse Jackie and her team of LPNs and RNs and set up places across our district where our employees can go if they elect to take that vaccine.
Okay, thank you. I also had a question about the process for buses when a driver is out and no sub is available. So apparently there was a situation on Monday where 2 bus routes were combined, and there were a total of 51 kids, 2 to a seat, who got off of that bus. Some kids are on the bus as long as 20. I'm sorry?
She said 51 and 2 to a seat.
Yeah. Sometimes, you know, sometimes the student might not be on the bus for very long, depending on where they're picked up and how far they are from the school, but they can be on for as long as half an hour. So my concern is, especially in this period of time where we know cases are rising, has this been a consistent issue? Is this an anomaly? How is this going to be handled between now and our winter break?
So President Ordway, Ms. Frank, I think I will need to defer that question to Mr. Miglerino as he may have better details regarding those procedures than I do.
And he's ready.
President Ordway, Ms. Frank, yes, we have had a couple occasions. In fact, we've already received the notice tonight that we will have some staffing challenges tomorrow with bus transportation. It has not been a constant occurrence, but the frequency has increased of late, as we had talked earlier about, some greater cases of positivity that we have experienced throughout the district. So we do collapse the routes. It does. The one mitigating factor and the reason for the notice to go out as soon as we are aware of this is it really does delay the buses getting to their ultimate destination, and when we have to combine routes like that. So I think in addition to the, I'll say, more crowded bus activity that we're seeing, we do see that the students do arrive to the schools late.
Okay, so again, I do understand that everything about this situation is challenging, but if we're telling County Public Health Department that one of our mitigation strategies is 3 feet social distancing, and we're combining bus routes and putting kids 2 to a seat where there's not 3 feet between them for at least a 15 to 20 to half hour time period, then we're not following through on the mitigation strategy that we said we were using consistently. So when they're giving us advice and saying, yes, continue with your mitigation strategies, do you see the problem here? I
Are you
don't-
volunteering to drive? We could use you.
You would not want the lawsuits that would result from me attempting to drive a bus. I'm just pointing this out. And I don't have an answer, but I really don't want kids crowded in on buses. I don't think that's safe, especially with the way our counts are. So I'm just bringing this up in a public meeting because this concern was brought to me.
Ms. Frank, Mr. Miglerino, would you be able to get us some more information on that and how we, how far apart we are and that sort of thing? Because the number 52, I want to make sure that we've got accurate numbers. So when we do have that many, we know how to fix it, so to speak. Just want to make sure that we're having accurate information on that. Okay.
President Ordway, may I
Yes,
add
ma'am.
a
Oh, I'm
comment
sorry.
to that too for Ms. Frank? I do also want to clarify when you mentioned when we talked to Maricopa that we say our mitigation strategies are consistent. We do fully disclose in a very candid way what is working, what is consistent, and where we have been in a position to have to deviate. So I just want you to know that we do share that type of thing as well.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Moffitt. Thank you for providing that information. And then finally, I have received numerous text messages and emails. I think the board has received some of these emails as well. I'm aware of, we have at least one staff member who is recovering at home from COVID, and by her or the staff member's self-reporting, currently receiving breathing treatments. I have heard we have a staff member who is in ICU with pneumonia and blood clots. I received an email from 2 teachers, a husband and wife, who both caught COVID, which they feel they caught it at school. And I know you have the total numbers on the dashboard. I would really like to know, to date, how many staff have been infected with COVID, whether they've recovered or they're still recovering. I would like to see the number on that. Again, I'm really concerned that we're not in a hybrid model, that we're not online with the increase in the numbers that we're seeing. And I'm very concerned when I get these kinds of reports and emails and text messages. And I've received emails from, former colleagues, people I've worked with for a decade, who are afraid. They don't feel comfortable. And they're emailing me and they're saying things like, I don't know that I can stay in this district longer. Again, I realize that this has been hard and challenging for everyone, but I just want to share that with you. I don't know that I have an answer for it, but I felt like it needed to be said. Thank you.
I think we're finished with our questions. Does that conclude your whole report?
Yes, it does, President Ordway. Thank you.
I will tell you that I found that to be special, unique, unusual, extraordinary, Herculean, fabulous. You guys are undotted, you're empathetic, you're thoughtful, you're graceful, you're wise, and most important, and those who have been in this district for a while will get it, Dr. Finch, you may get it, delightful. Anyway, moving on to our next report. Who's next? Ms. Frank?
is the call to the public. Do we have any public comments?
We do not.
Okay, so then we will move on to the consent agenda. I move the governing board approve consent agenda items A through M.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So next up, action item, I move that the governing board accept.
Didn't come up?
Oh, mine didn't.
It didn't come up.
It
I
didn't
don't
come
see
up.
it.
It should be.
I don't see it.
Does anyone see it? We don't see it.
Not that I'm in a hurry to finish the meeting
I
or
mean,
anything.
we've all voted yes.
Can she record the votes, please?
Yes, she has recorded the votes. Moving on.
Okay. To, let's see, action item 7A. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 There are no oppositions to that. That would be 5 ayes, Miss Sheila. Oh,
Give her a second. She'll try again. See if it works now.
Yeah, they're not. I think the internet's slow.
Try it now.
Oh, there it is.
here she is. Yay. Thank you, extraordinary miracle worker.
And moving on. I move the governing board, that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to adopt the revision to the fiscal year 2020-21 expenditure budget.
Second.
Are there any further questions? No, there are not. So let us vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 7C. Oh,
I think we have to wait.
I'm
to
waiting for the
record
vote.
our votes.
There it is. Okay, moving on to the next action item. I move that the governing board award a pre-construction services contract to McCarthy for the elementary school number 32 project using the construction manager at-risk method.
I second.
is there anything different than when we talked about this before, Mr. Miglorino, that you want to tell
President
us?
Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch, I have an apology to share with you. I have
love
a
his
presentation
apology.
in front of me that you do not have, that I created. I created it over the Thanksgiving break and then failed to give it to anybody.
So you're refusing us a Christmas gift. Awesome. Go on.
But nothing has changed. It just had some additional information that has been included in the board update, and I just did it for illustrative purposes for the meeting. I think what's important to share with the board, and I was using in a previous conversation, I was using an analogy about maybe dating. This action item before you is really just, in my estimation, asking somebody to be married. We're not married yet. That would come at a later date when we bring the guaranteed maximum price back to the board for consideration. But this would allow us to enter into the final partnership to finish the design of Elementary 32. This particular school is going to be based on the Sonoran Foothills design, but would be built in the Stetson Valley community, which is near 55th Avenue and north of Happy Valley Road. And it is designed to take to address the capacity issues that we're having at Stetson Hills, Terramar, as well as West Wing campuses. Those three schools today, in the environment that we're operating in, are averaging about 98% of their design capacity. And there is a community that is being built near 75th and Jomax, which would be in close proximity to this school site, that would generate 1,700 homes in our district. It will take us approximately 6 more months to complete the design, 5 to 6 months to complete the design for the school. And we would bring back a guaranteed maximum price sometime late spring, early summer, to be able to make a decision at that point in time as to whether or not we want to build the school during next school year. The fastest we would be able to open the school in terms of timeline would be August of 23, or 22, excuse me, August of 22. We would take all of 21-22 school year to build it. And we think this is going to be necessary due to the growth that's happening in this corridor. So I had all this information kind of contained in a beautifully crafted presentation, I
With
assure you.
pictures?
Um, and I failed to include it in the board packet, so I apologize for that. I can forward it to you just for reference purposes, so that you would have it. I think the one thing that is not determined at this point would be the school boundaries, and so I'm just kind of cautionary.
Did you really have to say that word?
Everything was going so swimmingly.
Mercy! I even forgave you the lack of pictures.
It's a forewarning. There are boundary maps that are in the presentation. Not that we have boundaries determined for this. It's just to illustrate the campuses that will be impacted by this particular school, and they are K-6 schools, K-8 schools, as well as Hillcrest Middle School will be affected by building this school. So it will be a little bit complicated to determine the school boundaries, and school boundaries themselves are always
fun,
emotional,
and interesting,
emotionally charged decisions that we have to make. That is a decision that we will make in the future. This before you tonight is just again, asking
just the
somebody to get
engagement.
married. It's the engagement, if you will, to bring the construction manager, the general contractor, if you will, to enter into a pre-construction services contract so that we can finalize the design. And I'll be happy to answer any questions the board.
Well, we appreciate the invitation and also the foreshadowing of the boundary changing. You have a true question, Dr. Tweedy?
It's just more of a comment. And I know I'm going to get outvoted, but I just have the need to say this. So our enrollment is down 5.5%. So we have less students, but we anticipate needing more schools to house them. So it's not that we need this school. We could just move students around. And I kind of said we should address this when we did the boundaries last time, and we did not. And I don't think the answer to this is wasting millions and millions of dollars when we already are off 5.5% on our enrollment. Even if Prop 208's getting challenged in court, we don't know that we're going to be held harmless. I just think that building a school is a horrible idea and it's fiscally irresponsible. But that's my 2 cents.
Mr. Miglorino, could you talk about where the money for this elementary school would come from?
Certainly. President Ordway and Dr. Tweedy, to that point, again, this particular project is included in the bond authorization, which is not an automatic approval to build it. It still needs to be done in a very feasible and thoughtful way. What is happening in the competitive environment that we're operating in is, as you've heard Dr. Finch mention before, convenience trumps everything when it comes to parental choice. And so as this particular area continues to grow, without a campus to take off the burden of the current students that are at those 3 schools that I named before, Stetson, Terramar, and West Wing, the parents are going to choose another option. So this is in order to remain competitive because of growth that's happening. But we do recognize that we also have other concerns related to the loss of students that we do need to make concerted efforts to try and gain those students back. This decision wouldn't be to build this school at this point in time. It would be to design it and potentially build it in the 21-22 school year, in which the board would make a decision at that point when the guaranteed maximum price is brought before them. This is really to design a school that's going to be built on this site. When it gets built is in question, but it would be funded with bond dollars from the 2019 bond authorization as was prescribed in the voter-approved pamphlet.
A point of clarification, though, you couldn't operate the school at bond dollars. You're going to need M&O money, right, to staff it and stuff?
President Orway, Dr. Tweedy, that is correct. It will take approximately I would say $800,000 to $900,000 in additional operating expenses to open a school, depending on how many students were actually attending the school, above and beyond what we would normally have without having that campus.
And that includes staffing and utilities and everything.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and so
I'd
that's
like to add
what
there too, because this is this argument has come up before, and I'm going to give my argument again. The we will know tomorrow if TSMC comes to our neighborhood. We may have to build 4 or 5 more schools if 40 to 50,000 people come to our zone. We've beat the demographers report 3 years in a row. And we were on projection to beat it again, but something happened that was unique. That was a pandemic. That's why we have the loss of 5.5%. We fully anticipate that we will continue to grow. In that zone, actually, those 4 schools that Mr. Migliorano was talking about are already over capacity. And the solution of busing them to Sunrise or whatever, to the Sunset Ridge, or to schools that are less capacity, or pick a school.
I would pick Desert Sage because it's right by where you're trying to build.
Well, I didn't understand what you said.
Desert Sage.
Okay. My point is that the research again shows that convenience trumps everything, and I shared that report many times from the PhD kid that worked on that report, and I'm convinced that we are going to continue to grow in that zone. All the research says it's going to grow in that zone, and they're pulling permits today, as Maricopa County is still one of the fastest growing counties, if not number 1 in the nation. So they're coming. They're emptying out of California to our neighborhood and other surrounding states. So Deer Valley will continue to be a growing district, which is great.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Thank you, President Ordway. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Migliorino for meeting with me to answer my questions regarding this item. And Mr. Migliorino, can you just explain again, if we approve this tonight to move forward, to become engaged, as you say, and we determine that, in April or whenever it is, we need to make the determination that it's not the right time to go forward with a new school, what does that impact to us?
So President Ordway, Mr. Bryan, we would have the expense of the pre-construction services contract to the general contractor, or the construction manager at risk is the terminology that we use, and the expense of the architect, but the design would be ours. So it would be a prepayment on building that school in the future. We still think that we need to build the school. It's when we need to build the school that I really cannot answer at this point in time. We think we need to build it during the 21-22 school year, based on the data that we have today, and that would be to open in August of 22. But we would have the expense of the pre-construction services contract. So and the architect design. So the pre-construction service contract has not been negotiated with the general contractor. I would think it would be no more than $150,000, but the design, it wouldn't be that we would get nothing for that. We would have the design completed, plus we would have the expense to the architect for the design, even if we decided not to build the school.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Migliorino. The other thing I do want to share too is that as Dr. Finch already stated, the TSMC is deciding tomorrow about what their future plans will be in our school district, as well as the Phoenix Village Planning Committees in the north part of Phoenix are all some of the busiest village planning committees because of the vacant land within our areas, as well as just the infill projects that are occurring. So for those reasons, I will be supporting this tonight.
Mrs. Reed?
2 quick clarifying questions, Mr. Migliorino. So the $150,000 that you referenced before, that money is coming out of, it's not coming out of our M&O budget, it's coming out of our our bond authorization, correct?
President Ordway, Ms. Reed, that is correct. It would come out of the bond funds, as would the architect
Okay.
fees as well.
Thank you for that. And then what is the date that money has to be utilized by in order to build the school? What's the drop dead date?
President Ordway, Ms. Reed, typically it's a 10-year window, but there are some exceptions to that rule. And so I don't have those all committed to memory. But I think beyond what the statutory requirements are, we told the public that we were going to do these projects in this 5-year window because we felt that they were going to be necessary. So we think it would be within this 5 years that we would build it.
Thank you.
Ms. Frank?
So I'll just say I share Dr. Tweedy's concerns about the dip in enrollment and spending money on something like this at this time. And in the spirit of never let it be said I was afraid to be outvoted on an issue, I have to vote no on this. But I realize that I'll be outvoted.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to call the vote. Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, that's 3 and 2 is 5. Next is 7D.
All right, let me pull that up. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve increasing the substitute daily rate to $105.
Second.
Jenna, do you have anything that you need to talk about on this, or?
President Ordway, just a reiteration of what I shared last Friday, that we did do a comparison with our peer districts and see that we are below the rate that they are offering. So Heather and Jim did get together to review our budget and what we would be able to afford for the remainder of this school year and moving forward. And it's proposed at a $105 day rate.
Mrs. Reed?
With that bump in pay for our daily rate, what does that do to our long-term subs?
No, that was going to be my question.
We did also ask for a comparison for long-term rate, and we are right in the middle, if not the same that many districts. So we're not proposing that we change the long-term rate, only the daily rate.
And then what is our current long-term sub rate?
Our current long-term sub rate is $125 a day.
Any further questions?
President Ordway, just a clarification. I believe the long-term rate is $130 a day.
Wow.
Mr. Miglorino is
okay.
correct. It is $130.
And there
Well, that changes my vote.
Sorry. Thank you.
So you are now forgiven for no pictures for the architect.
I just have one comment.
Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this. It is a complaint we have heard about. So I appreciate you doing the research and bringing forward this recommendation, Dr. Finch and Cabinet.
I haven't heard of it as a complaint. I have heard it as a challenge and an opportunity to do better.
Okay.
So on that note, all those in favor say aye.
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 And we have no opposed. Oh, no, my goodness. What are we up to now? Woo! I'm going to let you two duke out who wants to go first. Do you want to do it together? Have you practiced?
We didn't practice a variety board meeting.
Well, you've done so well for 4 years. I thought you
wouldn't-
guys could
Do you
just
want to
pick
go
it
first,
up.
Darcy?
Well, I'm not going to do like some kind of skit with somebody that majored in drama.
That's called being her stand-up person.
I would just say that I would like to wish everybody well. It's been an honor to serve the community of Deer Valley, and I wish the best for our students and our staff and our future board. So thank you for letting me serve Deer Valley.
My turn.
Wow, her voice got really shaky. Too bad we can't see your face. Go on,
I don't
Ms.
have a
Frank.
speech.
So I was thinking back, and I won't make this too long because I won't make this. Well, you did give me the opportunity to speak. I won't make this too long because I know everybody's
I'm
exhausted.
reminding you, it's almost 9, but go
And
on.
you've been listening to me since 5:30, so you're probably ready for me to be quiet now. But I was thinking back on 4 years ago when some friends of mine convinced me, I don't know how, to run for the board. And I called my dad, who had been president of our school board when I was growing up. And I said, Dad, I'm going to run for the school board. And he said, are you crazy? Don't do that. That's a terrible idea. You will spend hours and hours in long meetings listening to angry people yell at you. I said, no, Dad, it'll be fine. I'm going to run for the board anyway. So he came to the first board meeting in 2017, and unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight. He is at home recovering from COVID at the age of 92. But he did promise he would listen. So, Dad, if you're still awake and you're listening, number one, yes, you were right again. And number two, it is way past your bedtime, so go to bed. I would
you must be his favorite daughter. Oh, that's right.
Well,
You're twins, though, right?
Well, there's 3 of us.
Oh, there's
so,
3.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I'm
you
not
haven't
going to
mentioned the
I'm not
third
going to
one.
start a family feud right now. I would just like to thank everyone for the opportunity to serve the district, and also I do wish everyone well. I know the next couple of months are going to be really, really hard and extremely challenging for everyone, and I do wish you all the best, and all the best for our students and all the best for our staff. So thank you. And that's it for my board report.
Miss Reed, top that.
Oh, I don't know that I can top any of those.
I mean, you can't say it, so go ahead.
Last week, we had our Arizona School Board Association annual conference done virtually, and I was able to attend that and participate in the delegate assembly where we voted for our new ASBA officers, state officers. So I just want to give a congratulations to President-elect Ann O'Brien, who will be serving as the president of ASBA starting in the new year. We had great professional development during the day and a half that we were there. And thank you to our sponsors who helped make that available to us to be able to have that virtual conference. One of the things that is probably my favorite thing as a community leader and as a school board member is the community angel tree that Mrs. O'Brien and I have led the past few years. It started because we found out that a group of teachers were buying gifts for students that couldn't, that otherwise wouldn't have Christmas gifts. And so we thought that because of the community that we serve, that we live in, that we would have some community members that would want to do that. And by far this year, our community has stepped up in huge ways. We have over 300 gifts that were sponsored, plus probably about an additional $1,200 that people donated to buy gift certificates for the families. And so over the next few days, we'll be sorting those gifts and delivering those to several of our Title I schools. So thank you so much to all of our community members and parents and teachers who adopted our kids. I know that because of you, they will wake up on Christmas morning and have presents under the tree and warm clothes to wear when it gets cold. Darcy and Jenny, it's been an honor to serve with you over the last 2 years. Thank you guys so much for always bringing your viewpoints. And while we may not have always agreed on all of our votes, I do appreciate the insights that you have shared. And I wish you well in your next venture, and slightly jealous that you'll be watching from home on Tuesday nights, right? Right, you'll be watching. Yeah. And then just in regards to the presentation tonight to go virtual as we return back to school in January, I wanted to take just a few minutes. I wholeheartedly believe that the safest place and the best place for our kids is in our classroom learning in person. All 4 of my kids have been in brick and mortar classrooms since we have returned to school. I also know that there is a responsibility that we have as a board and as district leadership to make sure that we can operate our schools safely. And it has been very heavy on my heart over the last really two to 3 weeks as cases have continued to climb, that and students are quarantining and teachers are quarantining, and we're having issues with finding coverage for our schools, that things are getting very bad very quickly. So I see both sides of it. I'm going to ask that as parents and community members and teachers, whether you agree or you disagree with the direction that this is going for January, you want us to be virtual longer, you want us to be virtual tomorrow, you don't want us to be virtual at all, to please make sure that your comments, your emails, and the things that you post and share are respectful. The last 6 months has been very trying to be a governing board member in the state of Arizona, and I'm sure across the country. Personally, I've been borderline threatened by people on both sides of the issue. People threatened to come to my home and post my address online to have a protest because they didn't agree with the way that I voted. Recently, employees of our district decided to share personal information about the health of one of my children online to make a political point. And let me make it very, very clear, because I'm an elected official and a governing board member, it doesn't mean that I lose my right as a parent. And it doesn't mean that my children lose their rights as students to be protected in our district. I don't ever want to read anything about my kids online that somebody from our district or another parent has decided to share or post because I'm a governing board member. That's a boundary that does not need to be crossed. So, as a parent, I'm asking that you please respect my privacy and my family and my home, because I wouldn't ever, as a governing board member, choose to post something about my teachers that would be disrespectful, or any of my students. That's a boundary that I don't cross. So, keeping it nice and happy again, I hope that everybody has a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and a Happy New Year. And I hope that everybody remains safe and healthy as we break. Thank you.
Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you very much, President Ordway. So I'm going to actually start with the COVID presentation and some of the decisions about going virtual, because we already have some emails regarding that, and would like, again, to remind everybody that when the governing board members up here, as well as our cabinet members and you as staff, no one could begin to imagine that we would be leading and serving during a pandemic. And it is stressful as governing board members to be making the decisions at the local level. And I'm grateful to be getting to make them at our local level, because I don't believe that the leaders at the state level know best what should happen in Deer Valley on a whole lot of things. But I'm glad that we are able to answer our community's needs. I would ask that folks remember that when you write, and I appreciate getting your emails no matter what side they're on, but to please be respectful and remember that we don't sit up here and make decisions that are in our self-interest or for money, because we don't get paid. There's no upside to being a governing board member except to believe that you are making a positive impact in the community which we serve, for the students and the families that live here. And we have to take into account over 32,000 students and staff that all come from all different walks of life and situations. So while some of you being virtual all the time is wonderful for you, some of you need to be in school. Please remember that we are doing the very best we can with the data and facts and information and guidance from the experts in this situation. So, and again, please follow our mitigation strategies, as well as the rules that you agreed to follow when you came back to in-person learning. Having said that, I would like to thank Mrs. Reed again for her leadership on our Angel Tree project, as well as acknowledge that one of our business partners, Natalie's Dancewear, again accepted donations. And when I went to pick up the donations that were delivered to her shop, I filled up the entire back end of my husband's 4Runner and actually told my mother, who was helping me, she might have to have packages on her lap on the way. It was filled up. I couldn't see out my rearview mirror. So thank you so much to the community for your generosity. Many families will be blessed this holiday season. A shout out to Deer Valley Education Foundation for their support with their donation for food at Thanksgiving. I want to acknowledge, I did attend the Arizona School Boards Association annual conference last week. It was excellent. We had a keynote speaker, DJ Eaglebear Vanis, who talked about leading with courage, thriving in tough conditions, and remembering the importance of taking care of ourselves so that we could do those things. The Arizona Superintendent Association has awarded their All Arizona Superintendent Award recipients for this year. And they were, I apologize, my phone shut. Those were Dr. Cheryl Paul from Sacaton Elementary School District, Dr. Krista Anderson from Apache Junction Unified School District, Nora Gutierrez from Tolleson Union High School District, and Dr. Donna Lewis from Creighton School District. And this is very exciting news, especially since 2 of the 4 names I just listed are Deer Valley people. So a special congratulations to Dr. Paul and Dr. Anderson, who came from Deer Valley Unified School District. And then finally, well, actually, not quite finally, thank you, Dr. Tweedy and Mrs. Frank, for your service to our community on the school board. I always enjoyed having your perspective at the dais and appreciate your forthrightness, honesty, and hard work serving on the school board. And finally, happy holidays to everybody. I hope that our staff is able to relax and get some good time doing whatever it is they enjoy, and they're able to take some deep breaths. So thank you all.
Well, awesome. Okay, it's 9 p.m. I'm going to say this really quickly. Not that I don't mean it as much as I would if I went slowly. So I started off the meeting by saying that our mindset is to know how to safely keep students on campus as an option while we continue to get better at our off-campus virtual options. We must continue to emphasize that no matter where the learning is taking place, it is real school. So your living room, your bedroom, your classroom, your whatever room, it's real school. So we just really need to know that it's real school no matter where we're learning. As we live together through this pandemic, we have to remember to have grace, to be innovative, share our concerns respectfully, be understanding, seek clarity before passing on the quote-unquote I heard information. Together, we'll move through this pandemic, and together we'll continue to monitor and adjust for all the seen and unforeseen ripple effects. We can't be in a better school district that appreciates each other as family. We have had I've been on board with you guys for 4 years, differences of opinion, sometimes a little snippy, snappy stuff. But in the end, did you make a snippy, snappy face? Awesome. But what I'm going to say is in the end, we always were traveling down the same road for students. And the different perspectives just make each other a little bit deeper in our thought process. Didn't make me agree with you all the time. No, I'm kidding. But what I'm saying is we had dedication, and we still have dedication. So these 5 people that sit here don't do it for power. Needless to say, we don't do it for glamour, nor for the money. We do it because we have students always in the center. And real quick, I do want to thank Deer Valley Education Foundation because I, too, am going to be able to provide food over, well, it's more than 10 days now, but over the Christmas or winter break for families to have some special meals, and we'll see if there's anything left over. There might be some clothes too, I don't know. But again, we all come together, and with that, happy holidays and stay safe. Wear your mask, wear a seatbelt, stay away from all your friends, use the phone a lot. You have FaceTime. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. So, on that note, anybody want to make a motion to end the meeting at 9:12?
Dr.
We need
Finch's
to
turn.
let the superintendent.
Oh, we do have to let him
give-
talk. Okay, go.
All right. I was debating whether to talk about this. I'm gonna change my mind. I just want to echo again to what Ms. Reed and Ms. O'Brien said, that attacking families, attacking staff, attacking each other is not the plan. It's not how we behave as humans. So as you know, the PV superintendent resigned yesterday for a grocery list of reasons, all of which has happened to me as well. And so the good news about it is we have a strong cabinet, a strong board, and we're marching in the same direction. And so that's important that the community sees that I think we found middle ground where we can work with both sides of the spectrum, and I'm very proud of that. That's Deer Valley has been a leader all through this event from the very beginning, especially with our NEVIC crew, of which PV is a partner. So again, shout out to my PV partners or my NEVIC partners, the superintendents from the 8 other districts that we work with. They're vital, and we share information all the time and ideas, and that's helped us be a better district as well. Again, happy holidays and all that good stuff. I'm looking for Santa to swing by this year. We need I don't know if his deer are going to be COVID-19 positive or not. I don't know if he's going to make a lap. We can get an engine instead of a deer. We'll find a way to get your presents to you kids. Don't worry about it. We got it covered. Deer Valley will get you there. So, and again, thanks to the project, Angel Tree Project, where we got a lot of, I know throughout the district, this is one of the first things, I've mentioned this before, one of the first things I noticed when I came here was the outreach from the schools. It's just amazing, amazing. I've been in a lot of districts, 7 to be exact, and I've never seen this scale of the community stepping up and to help each other. And it's almost like whatever the request, Deer Valley finds a way to take care of it. If it's not through the teachers, through the staff, through the foundation, through the administrators, we find a way to get that family help, and I'm really proud of that. So happy holidays. Have a great season. We'll see you on the other side in January. Thank you.
You mean when it's no more 2020? All right, motion to
I
adjourn the
move
meeting
we adjourn the meeting.
at 9:14.
Second.
Okay, real quick, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, goodbye. See you.